So welcome everybody to the ROI group. Today it's June 8th, 2022, and we've got two wonderful guests, which I'll introduce in a few minutes. I apologize to everybody who's watching live, and we have a few people live and a lot more people will watch it recorded. I apologize because last month we didn't have an ROI group. It was our monthly session and I missed that simply because I got the dreaded disease, at least I think I did. Even though I tested negative for COVID, I did have all the symptoms and it was pretty bad. I went on for about 4 weeks. So again, I apologize for that. Usually I do a bit of an introduction, so I'm going to do that here. I just have a few comments that I want to share with the group because I get these questions all the time. You know, what's going to happen to the North American economy? We're real estate investors and developers. You know, should we all throw ourselves off a bridge? We know what the situation is. We're coming out, I hope, of a pandemic. We've had tremendous supply chain disruption. Now we've got a war. We've got inflation that's at a high for, I think, the past 40 years. So we have lots of challenges, but I wanted to show you something that gives me a little bit of hope that maybe better days are ahead. This is an article that comes daily from a newsletter called The Hustle. And they're showing that lumber prices, at least in the United States and to a lesser extent in Canada, are coming down. And in fact, they show a 52% drop just since March. It's now June, so that's a pretty fast reduction. And part of the reason for that is I think the supply chains are being kind of rebuilt, but also, you know, we've seen interest rates go up and single family home completion starts and building permits are all in decline. So a combination of rising interest rates and falling inventory means that we're seeing a drop in sales. And we're also seeing a drop in lumber prices. I mean, 52%, that's a good news story. And if you haven't already subscribed to this, Marcel, do you just subscribe to this newsletter?
Not yet.
Yeah, it's thehustle.co. So it's not .com, guys. It's thehustle.co. You can see it on the screen here. It's a free daily newsletter, and it talks about real estate. It talks about the economy. It talks about tech. I mean, it's a really good newsletter, and it's free. It comes in once a day, and it's got over 2 million readers, and I really like it, and a little bit of entertainment in it as well. So it's really worthwhile. At least I found it worthwhile. It always has some new ideas in it that I find interesting. I mean, I get a few newsletters that I actually look at, and this is one of them. So I get asked this question all the time, you know, what are my predictions for the future? I do have a PhD in urban economics, for whatever that's worth. And, but you know the joke, I'm sure you've heard the joke, when you put 10 economists in a room, you get 11 answers, right? And probably you get actually 15 or 20 answers. So you don't ever get really satisfactory answers, at least in my experience, from economists. But there are a few things that I think are happening, and they're really not predictions as much as I think observations. And that is that I think that given the supply chain disruptions and the change in the strategic position of major countries like Russia and China and the United States, that we're probably going to see a fortress North America. In other words, there'll be even more trade between the US, Mexico, and Canada. That's what I think is happening right now. So more local production of everything, food, energy, you know, manufactured goods, you name it, we're going to shorten up the supply chains. And if I had a choice as to what I would invest in, it wouldn't be office buildings. I think office buildings are headed towards the dumpster. The work from home or the mixed use buildings are much more popular, in my opinion, than just a pure office building. I'm not sure what's going to happen to the mega mall. You know, if I owned a mega mall, I'd be inclined to probably take it down and maybe combine some stores with some residential. And I think a lot of developers are doing that. However, I really like the industrial sector. I mean, you guys have heard me talk about it before until you're blue in the face from hearing me talk about industrial buildings. That's where I think we should go, because industrial production is reshoring. So that means people have small gigs and small workshops to giant fulfillment centers. I think we're seeing a big change there. And of course, I'm huge on the live-work condition, where you can have an office and an apartment, or you can have store, maybe you're a hairdresser, you can have an apartment there, so you can live and work, whether it's a side hustle or a bigger business than that. So I think those are the sort of the real estate trends that I'm kind of picking up on. And clients of mine, like this young fellow by the name of James, is picking up a property that you can see on the screen here. I won't mention where it is because it hasn't closed yet, but it's about a 5-acre property. And it has an industrial building here with actually 3 bays in it. So one here facing the street, one in the middle, and one at the end. But this is what I really liked about it. It has a 3-bedroom house here. And in the back here where you see this kind of orange roof, it has an apartment above one of the workshops. So this is perfect for a live-work condition. And so when James showed it to me, I encouraged him to go ahead and purchase it. HABU, as you know, stands for highest and best use. And here's just a few photographs. I'm going to move these guys over so you can see it. So this is kind of an isometric view of it. So here is one of the bays that faces the main road. Then, as I mentioned, there's a middle bay, and then there's the end bay here with the orange roof that has the apartment above it, and there's the 3-bedroom house. So it has a lot of stuff that I really like about it. And then James and I were talking about what is the highest and best use. And so you know, this little sketching is my sketching. And for those of you who know me well, I'm an engineer, not an architect, so this is kind of the best I could do. I'm not an artist like Marcel either. So what James is going to do with it is he'll rent the front bay probably to somebody who's a mechanic who fixes up cars. And who wants to sell used cars, because this is perfectly set up for that, and it's consistent with the zoning. So he can have somebody working here facing the road and have a little car lot here where they might sell 6, 8, 10, 12 vehicles a month. Then there's the middle bay to rent. That'll go to somebody who wants a workshop. And then the back workshop will go to somebody who wants to live and work, because you don't want somebody in the apartment above the workshop who's not working in the workshop, because, you know, if they get there early in the morning, they're making noise, that people in the apartment will complain. So that's truly a live work condition. And one of the people, I'm sure, one of the people who's going to rent here, either the middle bay or the front bay, will probably want the 3-bedroom house. Then what else is he going to do with the extra land? Well, he's going to park RVs, boats, and equipment here. And that's a very profitable thing to do with your land, by the way. You know, you can't park your giant 20-ton loader or even your RV in your parking in your driveway anymore. The bylaw officer will, or the ordinance enforcement officer will knock on your door in no time and tell you to move it. So, you know, if you are a school bus driver or you have a large RV or, you know, a dumper or a loader, this will be someplace where you can do that. And then many of you know that I'm big on those mini contractor yards where, again, contractors can park their equipment and store their materials. So there's enough room for some yards back here. And then maybe he'll get some portable storage containers. When we work through the numbers, just so everybody knows, the purchase price is, I think, around 1.1 million. And the fair market value after he animates it, after he actually executes on this plan, could be about double that, about 2.2 million. And if he goes, you know, if he gets the whole thing developed along the lines that we talked about, it could even go as high as $4 million. That's a future shaping, a future changing event for James, who's a young person. So I quite like the plan. So that gives you an idea that if industrial is going to be as strong as I think it is, then you can actually, as an investor, you can, you know, you don't have to go out and buy a 1 million square foot, you know, fulfillment center that Amazon is a tenant in. I mean, that costs a lot of money, but something like this, you know, a lot of people can manage. I mean, you can't really buy that much for $1.1 million in Ottawa or Toronto anymore. Certainly nothing in Vancouver, I don't think. Maybe a shack. You know, so this has real potential, in my opinion. And I wanted to share that with you. So that's one way to take advantage of some of the trends. As you know, the ROI group is sponsored by Matt Slobodian, who's probably the #1 mortgage broker when it comes to CMHC funding for multi-res. He's now moved to Ottawa. He used to be in Winnipeg, and he's been a good friend to me. And of course, Steve Shepard, you've heard me talk about Steve before. I've known him since he was in his 20s. He owns his own firm, his own law firm. He's a wonderful supporter of mine, and he's bailed me out of any number of troubles. So I have to always recognize Steve's support. And I don't really like, as you know, bylaws that much and zoning and enforcement. And I just clipped this out of the local newspaper. This lady in Stittsville, which is a suburb of Ottawa, put out a little lending library at the end of her driveway or in the end of her walkway. And some neighbor complained, and she was forced to, remove it. And I thought, these zoning enforcement people, ordinance enforcement officers or police, don't really have enough to do. And I thought that was really kind of crappy. And fortunately, she was able to negotiate with the city of Ottawa and put her little library back out. I mean, the idea is leave a book, take a book, right? I think it's a nice thing to do in a neighborhood. And certainly if my neighbor did it, there would be no complaints from me. But every city pretty much in North America has a 1-800-RAT line. So you can rat out your neighbor if you don't like what he or she is doing without even having to, leave your name. So I think that's terrible. One of the reasons why we didn't have a meeting last month, and so I've broken the chain, and again, I apologize for that, is not only was I sick with what wasn't apparently COVID, but sure felt like it, was I finished this book last month. It's another one of my learning outcome novels. It is the last one I'm going to write. This is a 5 of 5, but there won't be any more. But if you're interested, I'm going to put in the chat box this link that you can see at the bottom of the page, which you can download a PDF copy of. It's free. I'll give it to you and read it. It's a lovely story. I think so anyway. And you can read the log line on the screen here. It's a lovely story about a young carpenter and his tiny daughter who are literally walking from Houston to Boise, Idaho. They're hitchhiking, walking, whatever. It's a long way. And they're totally impoverished. And in fact, the destination for this young man and his daughter is not Boise. It's an imaginary town 30 miles east of Boise. And it's his arrival in this very impoverished, totally devastated town that coincides with the revival of that town. And he meets a young architect. You can see her on the screen here. Her name is Clara. And she comes from a very wealthy background, but it's also a love story, love lost, love found, love regained, all that good stuff. And so I'm trying to tell a good story. I hope you'll like it. But I'm also trying to teach something so that you might learn how I think about real estate, how I think about animation, adding new revenue streams to real estate, and how you can actually pull a community, in my opinion, out of the, it's kind of like Detroit on a bad day in the 1980s, how you could pull a community that's really devastated out of that situation. I walked through that. It's a long book. It's I think over 500 pages, but anyway. And if you wanted to help me out, you could always spend $10, and I'll put this link in the chat box too, and go get yourself a Kindle copy. I'm trying to get it to be a bestseller on Amazon. So if you wanted to help a poor professor, you could go out and spend $10, but you can have the free copy. And if you don't want to spend $10, that's okay. So we're going to hear from Greg now in about another minute or so. Greg is a friend of mine. He's based in Saskatoon now. And he's going to show how to boost income for real estate investors and developers by turning some of your surface parking lots or underground parking lots, or even just the parking lot behind your duplex or triplex, into a moneymaker. And Greg's got a long history in this business. He's actually got a PhD, but I don't think it's in storage. So I call him Dr. Yelland. He's one of the co-founders of Got Storage in Saskatoon, and he operated quick store containers in Lloydminster, that's Alberta, providing mobile storage solutions to homeowners, restoration firms, local businesses in northern Saskatchewan and Alberta. He has 8 years in the experience in the storage industry and 28 years experience in identifying problems and potential solutions in healthcare, education, and justice. I suspect that's what his PhD is more relevant to. But he's a great person, a good person, and I have some of those containers on some of my sites, and I do make money with them. So, Greg, I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to ask you to share your, if you don't mind, share your. Greg, are you there? Where is he?
Yep, I'm here. Yeah.
Oh, there you are. Okay, so you could share your screen, so it lets me off the hook.
Okay.
And guys, if you have any questions, put them in the chat box, okay?
Okay. Thank you for that introduction, Bruce. I'm just trying to move the thing around here. Okay, so yes, you're right, Bruce, in that my PhD is totally unrelated to storage, but it actually, they tie together a little wee bit, and we'll come into that a little bit later on. Well, what I want to talk about today is more related to what I've been doing for the last 8 years, which is renting and selling portable storage containers and creating customized storage solutions for people. Currently, I don't own an apartment building. I don't have any multifamily, but I do have, and I have had over the years, various single-family home rentals. So I have some experience with the rental market in real estate, and I've owned a variety of businesses over the last 30 years. So I have some experience from each of those that I think comes to bear here. One of the things that we're always trying to do with our rentals, of course, is maximizing all of our various profit streams or our revenue streams. And where I see real estate and my current endeavors with storage combining quite nicely is in trying to pull some additional dollars out of the space that's been devoted for renting parking stalls. So the numbers, at least from my friends who own, pardon me, multifamily buildings, they've been talking about how the storage renting storage space for cars has been decreasing over the years. Now, there's a number of reasons why, and Bruce talked about working from home at the very beginning of his presentation, but work from home has certainly had a big impact on what people do and what they would need, the kind of space that they need. Depending on the city you're in, mass transit, ride sharing is having an effect on people, or at least their needs for car space. Certainly changing attitudes. Different generations of people have different opinions about what they want and need as far as personal vehicle ownership. And currently, of course, the fuel prices are kicking people around. So there's a lot of reasons that are impacting this. I did some quick research this morning. COVID had an impact, of course, a variety of impacts. And one of them has been that almost 31% of people across Canada worked from home during COVID. So it's 30.7% of people work from home. Most of these people were 35 to 54. They had a degree or a part of a degree. Pardon me, they worked in white collar jobs. They were primarily in the East, and they worked for large firms. So those types of people are probably a pretty good tenant in most respects. And yet now they're working from home. So they don't want to pay for rent at home for a car. They don't want to pay for rent at the office for a car. They're finding that they don't need to. And further, outside of COVID, Stats Canada has done some research that talks about how 40% of all Canadian jobs could be done from home. So this is a trend that's going to continue on. It's not likely going to go away anytime soon. Now, if you've already got parking space in your multifamily buildings, then of course the ideal thing is just to be able to rent it up, increase your rents as you go along, keep doing what you've been doing, and everything's good. But the problem is, if that was working, we wouldn't be having this conversation. So what my suggestion is that we take a look at some other ways of trying to get around this. Obviously, what we've been doing this far hasn't had the success we want. So again, for the same reasons I just mentioned, working from home, transit, fuel costs, all those kinds of things are decreasing the number of renters that want to rent parking stalls, which of course is resulting in decreased revenues, decreasing the apartment's valuations. And as I just mentioned, I think now is maybe a time to take a look and see if there's any other ideas that we could try. Getting back to Bruce's comment earlier about highest and best use. What I'm suggesting is that we take a look and see if we can pull from the lessons learned from both the multi-billion-dollar commercial real estate industry and the multi-billion-dollar self-storage industry. As you know, many multifamily and self-storage REITs have done this. They've worked together to pull lessons from both fields. And what we're doing is we're looking at ways to offer additional services. So we want to offer what I'm going to talk about now is ways that you can offer your tenants access to custom storage solution using the unrented parking stall space in your buildings. Why this particular solution, and we'll get into the process by how I identify and define solutions later on, but essentially what makes this a good idea, I think, is because it's easy to implement, it's low cost, it's high return, and you've already got the space. You've already built the parking space, and now you just want to pull as many dollars out of it as you can. This is a picture of one of the containers that we've designed. We've designed and refined designs for other containers over the years. So this speaks a little bit more to something I'm going to talk about later about how you know that we can do this. But this particular storage unit, you could fit 5 of them, 4 of them at least, in a standard parking stall. So as the co-founders of Got Storage, my partner John Smith and I have combined 20 years of storage in self-storage and mobile storage. I focus primarily on mobile storage initially. We, as I just mentioned, we've refined and designed custom storage solutions for people. We have, working with our European manufacturers, we have developed proprietary containers like that one I just showed you. That has a series of aspects to it that are unique to that very specific container and unique to the needs of the moving industry. Oops, sorry. Bruce showed you this picture earlier. This is another one of our designs. This is the original intention of this container. On the left here was to put in condos or apartment buildings, but primarily condos, so that you've got a condo upstairs, you've got a parking space downstairs. What do you do with your winter tires? What do you do with your oil? What do you do with your bike in the winter time? That kind of thing. So you can put off-season storage in here, and as it shows, you can park your car underneath it, but it actually raises up high enough that I could park my half-ton truck underneath it. The green container on the right is a little container closer to what I'm suggesting people look at for their parking lots. It's 1 meter wide, it's 2 meters deep. This container shows safe trade in the roof line, so that, I mean, we have the ability, working with our manufacturer, we have the ability to embed people's logos and that kind of stuff in the manufacturing process itself. So some of our bigger corporate clients want that kind of a thing. We can brand it with your own brand. So the process that I use is very similar to what I've used over the last 30 years when I do research for people. You know, I've done a lot of evaluation type research where you have to go in and you look at this current situation and understand what's going on, what led to the current situation. Was the program developed as intended? Was it funded? And so, you know, what worked and what didn't work is where I'm trying to get to. So I need to understand where we're at now. Then I can identify some potential solutions. And in this case, you know, maybe you want to increase your rent per stall. If you're not going to rent all the stalls, maybe you want to try to get more money out of each stall. That'll probably work in the short term. It's not going to drive more spaces to be rented. You could also look at renting to different tenants, but that's a longer term solution. But maybe you could rent to different tenants over time and try to bring in tenants who are going to need that space. Certainly you could build something. I mean, you've already got the space and within whatever the requirements are for the building, maybe there's something you could add to it that would provide an income stream for the building. And another option, as I mentioned earlier, that's easy to do is just simply adding a custom storage solution. So when we're at this stage, this is essentially the stages of how I work with my clients. But when we're at the identifying the potential solution stage, we will discuss all of these. And then if storage is a good solution for your need, we'll talk about how to implement that. And that's where we start to talk about some of the various criteria of what that storage needs to look like. You could, with a significant amount of effort, put a C-can underneath the building, probably in an underground parkade. You could certainly put in 20-foot containers in there. I would suggest not, because you're not going to fill it up. One client won't fill it up enough to rent it all. So then you as the owner also still have some unused rented space. And clients are not likely to pay enough to pay for the whole space. So my suggestion would be smaller containers that are sized appropriately for what the homeowner or the renter is going to need. And we make it custom. We have options to do not only containers on the ground, but we're developing a sky locker right now, which I'll talk about in a bit if people want to. But the goal is to understand the situation, identify some solutions, find the right one, and implement it. So this is the whole highest and best use approach. And at the end of the day, we'll increase the revenue. And I would like you to be that happy person flying around with all the money. If we do this, pardon me, if we do implement this solution, we need to look for some early wins. And of course, the first thing is going to happen is, as the red line shows, your unrented space is going to decrease. As you fill more and more space with containers and storage space, your unrented space decreases. And at the exact same time, of course, your income increases. So that gives you some early benefits. But what we want is we want the home run. We want the long-term success. And that's what the green line shows us. So not only has our income gone up, but as you know, the business valuation or the building's valuation now has also gone up. And sorry, I'm going through this relatively quickly because I still have a cough thanks to COVID. So I'm trying to get this through before I cough too much on you. So what this slide shows is a bit of a case study. I know the numbers are different out east than they are in Saskatoon, but I've just taken some rough numbers here. And if we were to put in 48 of these smaller lockers and charge $65 a month rent. Now in Saskatoon, I would rent that for closer to $100. So I don't know what you would rent it for out where you are, but even at $65 a month, the numbers work and they work quite well. 65 a month times 48 units is $3,100 a month or $37,000 a year. Again, depending on the cap rate valuation that's appropriate for your location will depend on your location. But if we run this numbers forward and we take a look at a 5-year return, these 48 lockers are going to cost about $100,000 to purchase. And they'll be worth $100,000 5 years from now. I'm selling used containers now for what they were, the full retail value, what they were 5 or 6 years ago. And my containers have all been used out in the field. People just pay for storage. And as long as this works and is not broken, they don't care. And these containers, because they're underground in your parkade, are going to look much closer to new. So if we choose kind of the average cap rate there of 6%, over 5 years, you've added $187,000 in income. You've added $624,000 to the building. Your containers are still worth what you paid for them. So effectively, I've paid you $811,000 to buy some containers from me. And I would make an argument that this is one way to truly maximize the cash flow and valuation potential of this particular space in your building. Now, I have some other pictures of some customized containers that we've developed over the years, but I'm quite happy to stop at this point and answer some questions for people. I'd like to.
I have a question, Greg.
Certainly.
And Eric Brisson's on this call. And thank you, Eric, for joining us. Eric, if you don't mind, because I know you'll have a bunch of questions, you can unmute yourself and ask away. But I have a question for you. And Eric, I hope you will unmute yourself and don't be shy and ask a couple of questions. So let's say I have a duplex or a triplex and I put some of these containers outside in the back, right? Mm-hmm. Or maybe I have an underground, parking garage or a parking garage on multi-res that's a surface parking lot. It doesn't really matter. What is the magic marketing button? In other words, what is the easiest way for a person to actually go about renting these? I mean, obviously, you go to your existing tenants and say, hey, I've got some containers here. You can store your stuff there. Are you interested? But are there any other sort of tricks that you've used in terms of marketing these things?
Yeah, I mean, essentially, I'm working with a client now to add some lockers to their ground level parking for their multi-res building. And what they found is that it's a 55 plus building and probably 70% of the parking spaces are empty.
Yeah.
So of course they're going to talk to their tenants. Yes. They're also looking at the people and the businesses around them. Now they're lucky in the sense that they are almost completely surrounded by a mall that caters to the clients that live in their building. So it's a mall designed for 55 plus people.
Right.
So they're going to the mall people, and they just went around and talked to the people in the mall, and they easily rented all of their spaces and then some. So they have a waiting list and they haven't even finished installing yet. And then the other thing is I did a quick analysis of the market for them because I work in self-storage all the time. So I did a quick analysis of them to let them know what the containers would rent for, or what that space would rent for, both for locker size and per square foot. So they were able to price it aggressively, but not give away too much. And people were able to very easily see the value in it. As
That's
far
cool.
as other ideas, I mean, I'm able to rent almost as many containers as we own just by running some Kijiji ads. People really seem to need it these days. So
Everybody's got too much stuff. So Eric, you did unmute yourself. Over to you, brother.
Hi, Greg. Thank you for the presentation. Just a few quick questions. How do you deal with the building code? Like, especially for us, like we're dealing with new buildings. So how do you manage to get around like for the building code, especially for fire rating?
right. So we've put containers in the basements of buildings to develop self-storage facilities. And the one project I'm thinking of is in Illinois. And essentially what we did is we showed to the fire marshal that we gave them some of the engineering information that shows that it takes an hour to burn through the metal on the container. So if there's a fire inside, it takes an hour to get out. And it takes another hour to get into the container sitting right beside it. So after looking at the numbers and the information, they basically come back to the developer and said, okay, so the $500,000 for the sprinkler system, you don't need to bother about. And we would like you to put roofs on these containers, which was the first time we realized that they thought these containers were open topped. So just simply the information about how the containers last seems to get around much of that. Building code issues for above ground or on ground parking. What we're learning, of course, is that it's city dependent or municipal dependent. And these people we're working with right now, they went to the city and they said, fine, you can put storage on your lot, that's fine. But you have to maintain a certain minimum number of parking spaces. You don't have to rent them to your tenants, but you have to maintain a certain minimum number.
So just a question as far as the, do you have ULC or CSA? Is this CSA approved?
We do have, these are manufactured in Europe, so we do have some safety ratings over there. We don't have, they're not CSA approved, and that hasn't been an issue. That's never come up as a problem.
So when you deal with at the local level from the city, from building inspectors, they're looking at a ULC code, some sort of stamp from an engineer saying that these meet these criteria. So
Right.
how do you get around with it? Like in Ottawa, for example, they'll ask for the ULC, and they'll ask for an approval stamp from an engineering from fire code, example.
Right. And so that's where I brought in the information from the manufacturer that talks about, you know, the research they've done that shows how long the buildings will last and in the wind load, the fire rating, all that kind of stuff. So I do have that stamped from an engineering firm.
I'd love to get actually those specifications and send it off to the building inspectors just to see how they would actually react and how they would actually approach this. How do you deal from a zoning perspective? Do you see any issues from a zoning bylaw?
The only issue we've had so far is with this project we're working on right now, where the city said you have to maintain X number of parking spots for your building. That's the only issue that's popped up so far, is they had to have a minimum number of spots. But even there, I mean, essentially those owners just started renting out that minimum number of spots. They rented them out to people who want to store RVs.
Okay. Okay. And
So-
as far as proximity of property lines, as far as space, square footage, have you seen any issues?
No, I haven't had any issues with that at all.
Yeah.
Eric, Greg, can you put in the chat box? Can you put in your name, your cell number, and your email address?
Sure.
So, Eric, if you don't mind, copy out Greg's contact information. And anybody else on the call, contact. So you can reach out to Greg separately after this conversation is over. So, Eric, I have a question for you. I've asked you this before. But just so everybody on the call and people who watch this and record it, Eric and his group, what they do is they build, sort of 15, 20, 25 unit, 30 unit multi-res buildings. And they do have underground parking, and they do have lockers underground. So they do have some storage going on right now. But Eric, you heard what Greg said, like a lot of these buildings, the 55 up buildings, for example, Greg mentioned that 70% of their parking spaces are unused. I mean, have you been seeing that, there's been a drop in demand for parking spaces for actual, for cars?
Not for our customer demographic. Basically, what we've seen is like for exterior parking spaces, but for interior parking, we had actually a waiting list to actually rent more of the interior parkings. So, but exterior, we see that where there is a demand, there's probably less of a demand for exterior parkings. That's where I see maybe these potential storage to actually fit in. It's just for us, we deal with new developments. So
Yeah.
obviously we would have to go through all the permits and go through all the requisite from the city. But I mean, as far as the demand itself, it's still, it might change, but what we're seeing now, there's still lots of demand for indoor parking, and there's as well lots of demand for indoor storage.
Okay.
So,
And do you find, as you build more buildings closer to, say, rapid transit stops, you might find in the new builds that even though you're required to put a certain amount of parking in, that the demand, because we've talked about it before, Eric, a lot of the young people that I talk to don't necessarily own a car. They use Uber, they use Lyft, they use public transit. They don't want the cost, the expense, and the hassle of owning a car.
correct. No, you are totally correct. It's especially for us, for our demographic, which we are in the outskirts, so we're more in the green belt area of Ottawa, which is more of a drivable area. So that's what we're seeing. But yes, you are correct, and the city is definitely pushing for less and less parking. So
Right.
they're more lenient as far as variances for parking requirements. We're seeing that probably downtown Ottawa. We're seeing that probably downtown rural urban areas where there's less demand for more for public transportation and less demands for individual cars. But for our demographic, we're still experiencing the demand.
What do people pay in your buildings for an indoor parking spot?
It varies, but it ranges between $100 to $150 a month.
And Greg, if you put, like you're saying, 4 or 5 of these small storage things in a parking spot, how much money can they generate?
Well, in Saskatoon, I would generate just about $100 a month per locker. So it'd be $400 to $500 a month.
Yeah, so that's really where I was going, Eric, when we talked about this offline, that whether like I don't own some of the buildings that you do, but if you have a parking space that's not being used outside or even indoors, and you can generate $400 or $500 a month instead of $100 or $150 a month, that's a pretty big difference, multiplied over the number of spots that you have. So that's kind of where I was going.
Yeah, no, for sure. The revenue stream makes a lot of sense. Like, we look at the numbers, it makes a lot of sense. It's just try to see how we make that fit within the footprint that we have.
Yeah, exactly. The other thing that I would say, Greg, that in my experience is that certain cities are more difficult to deal with than others. I'm working with a client who has, has a mini storage business, contractor yards business in a small town kind of east of Ottawa. And I couldn't believe it. And listen to this, Eric. The city and the county are insisting that he pull a building permit for these portable storage units. I've never heard of that before. I mean, think about this, everybody. How many, industrial buildings do you drive by and you see, I don't know, 20 sea cans or 100 sea cans parked in the back of the building, right? And I can assure you, at least in my experience, none of those industrial users have applied for a building permit to put a sea can or one of Greg's containers in the back of his or her industrial building. So Greg, when they asked for that, for these portable storage containers to have a building permit, just to put, I think there were only 4 of them on this 28-acre site. No, it wasn't that big. 21-acre site. I thought that was insane. But you do have, Eric, to deal with zoning enforcement officers that maybe they just don't have enough to do. I mean, you saw what I started with that little library, that little tiny thing that this lady had at the end of her walkway. Yeah, I guess they just don't have enough to do. And I mean, but I just couldn't believe it. Anyway, that's enough of that. All right. So Greg, we're going to get on to Marcel in a minute. Eric, have you got any other questions?
No, basically you just, that's exactly our concern. Because obviously when we deal with new, they're going to ask for building permits. They're going to ask for CSA approval. They're going to ask for fire ratings. And I mean, that's why I want to get all the specs and see how they would actually treat this and how they would actually view this, because I definitely see a need for it. And I think we could make that work within our footprint. It's just to see how we deal with it from a building perspective and from a zoning perspective.
That's great. Can you copy, Eric, can you copy Greg's information out of the chat box? Because once we finish this, the chat box disappears.
Yeah, I did already.
All right, thank you. Greg, last few words to you, and then we're going to transition over to Marcel and get everybody out of here to get busy on the rest of their day.
Great. Well, thank you everybody for listening. I appreciate the opportunity, Bruce and Eric. I've made some notes and I'm going to reach out to you to make sure that I'm getting the exact information you want, and we'll see where this goes for you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So if you don't mind stopping sharing now, again, we've got some people on the call here who have bigger buildings, and some people may have smaller buildings. But I can tell you, Greg, that one of my clients, he owns, I think, 40 small duplexes, triplexes, 5plexes, 4plexes, whatever, in a neighborhood, an inner city neighborhood. And I talked to him about this mini storage thing quite some time ago, with the kind of containers that you're now introducing to the world. And his first name is Brian. And so Brian took this up with a vengeance, and I don't know, he's got 40 or 50 units in probably, 150 doors. And so he started to put in the back of all of these buildings, these storage units and renting them out to his tenants. And so a few years go by and he said that, he's got like 100 of these units. I don't know, I'm just making up the number, but it's about that. And he said, Bruce, I'm really in the mini storage business without necessarily having to, go out and buy a mini storage place, So it's a pretty cool thing. And I really like the business, and certainly I'm in it now in a very small way too. All right, so we're going to switch over to you, Marcel. I'm going to make you the co-host here. And hang on, make you the co-host. All right. And if you don't mind unmuting yourself. Marcel did some videos for a young coaching client of mine. I'm sure you guys know him. His name is Chris Long. Chris was a young carpenter who came to me when he was barely out of his teen years. And he was a single parent, right? He was a single parent from the time he was at like 19, I think. And he was a carpenter, and he was making some money. And somehow or other, what happened was I convinced Chris to buy 10 acres of heavy industrial land in south of Ottawa, and to do some contractor yards there. And, he's been at it for about 4 or 5 years now. And he calls me up last November, so just before Christmas in 2021. And he says he just got it appraised. He bought the site for $475,000, and then he gravelled it and put in these contractor yards. And he got it appraised last year, I think, for $3.6 million. And he calls me up and says, imagine me, being a millionaire. You know, it's a wonderful story. And then Marcel was introduced to me through Chris, and he made even an old dude like me look like a movie star when he did when we did in my house, we did a little video promotion for Chris, because I'm very fond of Chris and I was happy to do it. And one of the things I said in the video that Marcel and his crew did was, I like this model so much that I'm kicking myself that 5 years ago, I didn't do a mini contractor yards business for myself. I'm actually in the process of starting a long yards. I think I mentioned that in my video with you, Marcel, in one of the communities that I'm active in, which is Belleville, which is surprisingly an industrial place. But the reason I asked Marcel to come today, other than that, is that I think video is really, really important, especially for the younger people who are starting out, but even for older folks like me, to express your value proposition. And one of the things that Marcel talks about is he talks about doing videos that will help you, tenant your building, explain your building, whatever, your project, and communicate in a way that you can't communicate just with pictures or whatever else. And something Marcel put in this, and you'll see it here in a couple of minutes, is that he believes in providing an ROI. And you don't find many artists, like Marcel is an artist, who talk not only about their art, but they can talk about return on investment for that art. So over to you, Marcel.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Bruce. Is there a part of my screen that's blocked, or can you see the whole part?
I can see the whole thing.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, well, thanks for having me. I'm Marcel. I run this video production company called Lone Oak Cinema out of Ottawa. And yeah, I mean, although video is my tool, anytime that I get together with a business, someone trying to looking to put video together, I'm always looking at, where are the bottlenecks? Where's the problems in a business, and what can we do to help solve that problem? I mean, in most cases, anyone that has a business, what they're able to do is solve a problem for somebody, and the client who has a problem is trying to find who can solve their problem. So essentially, I love to be, a business matchmaker, really help drive the right clients to the right businesses. And hopefully it saves everybody a little bit of time in the process. But, what I can do is show you how I use video to solve my own problems as a business. And one of that is, if you think about the job interview, most people who have a regular 9-to-5, they'll have this job interview once, and then they have the job for, say, 2, 5, 10, 20 years, whatever it is. And that's it, right? But as entrepreneurs, we have job interviews almost every single day, if not many a day, where a client is evaluating whether we're the right people. And so that's something that I've kind of come across. And, as good as I've become to facilitate being interviewed in that scenario, I'd rather just get to business. And so, what I specialize in for both myself and for other people is video business cards. And rather than telling you about it, let me just show you mine here, and we'll let the video do the talking.
When it comes down to it, I'm a storyteller. I love to engage an audience with someone's story that keeps them, connected to the heart of what somebody's doing, what they're bringing to the table, and weave that together in such a way that keeps the audience entertained, but that truly leaves an impact. I'm Marcel, film director and founder at Lone Oak Cinema. I love to create awesome videos that connect businesses to their ideal clients. As a musician, when I was writing hit singles for radio, it was always about really capturing an emotion and meeting the listeners where they're at. When I discovered my love for video production, for me, it really was just an extension of music. That was such a powerful way to communicate with people as well. I really love being able to share my craft with an audience, and something about me just loves seeing that reaction. You've created something and people are reacting to it. We create all kinds of story-driven video, documentaries, commercials, and something we offer that people find very helpful is the video business card. Well, I find the easiest way to describe it is this. Imagine being able to communicate who you are, what you do, what makes you different in just 2 minutes. Imagine being able to build instant connection with new clients instead of just giving them information to read on a website. And what's incredibly valuable is that this video can be available anywhere, 24/7, instantly shareable by anyone. If people have a great business and want more people to know about them, well, that's where we come in and we help unleash the power of video for them. To be honest, I'm a bit of a perfectionist. I love offering people the best possible product and something that's really helpful for them. I really care about every single project I work on. And for me, it's not just about a bottom line, it's about seeing people succeed. We're all about helping people connect to their audience. If you feel you've connected with us, we would love to help connect you to your customers. Fill out the discovery form on our website and let's get the process started.
Here I am today with Lone Oak Cinema. These guys are fantastic. They come to your house or your place of business. They set up, doesn't take them long to do it. They set up professionally. They've got 2 cameras and they do a really great work. But one of the things that I really liked was I made a connection with their team. They are simpatico people, and I find that's really important because I look for people who are competent. That's always something that you want. People who are educated, that's great, but also people have what I call a good heart. And Lone Oak is one of those groups.
My experience with Lone Oak Cinema was phenomenal. From our first meeting where we talked about my ideas to working together for the day of the shoot, their professionalism and dedication to their art was above anything I could have ever expected. And I had a tear in my eye when I got to see the final product. It was everything I wanted and more.
When it comes down to it,
There we go. All right. So yes, for me, the moment I can qualify a client and have them connect with me and what I'm doing, my goal is to kind of skip the level 1 of that client interaction, the customer interaction, and hopefully fast forward us to at least a 5, where you've been able to, quote unquote, show off a little bit, show who you are, qualify the work that you do or qualify the offering that you have, and hopefully just get down to business. And for me, it's all about, as Bruce mentioned, a return on investment. If people are just doing video for the sake of, that's the most trendy thing to do. And if we're not looking at what the actual problems are, if the video isn't accomplishing anything other than just being pretty, then I would say someone is wasting their time and I wouldn't recommend myself to them. But, if there's a way that video can help, then that's where I'm interested. I love to really actually give somebody something that is helpful. So, a few lists that I've put out. So a good return on investment, client conversions helps facilitate a sale. So obviously, if you can have someone that believes in your product or understands what you're doing or resonates with who you are and is connected to that, because of the video, then a sale that you didn't have is a return on investment. Facilitates high demand of your service. So, sometimes the problem that a business will have is we have, empty slots in our storage yards. We have available time with our staff from ourselves in our business. And so if we can fill up that time for maximum capacity, then that is a good return on investment. So demonstrate value. So if a video can demonstrate, just say you look at you're going to an art show and you see a painting on the wall, you have no idea what it's worth, $5, $10, $100. But, if you're able to be educated on the piece, who the artist is, all of a sudden, a painting on the wall can be worth $1 million, right? And so if we can demonstrate the value of, what somebody is doing and why they're qualified to do it, or perhaps why they do it with excellence, then their product can be valued at a higher rate. Which, you take that and you spread it over your year and, hopefully the cost of the video will have been obliterated. So also less time on sales call. So of course, I love to fast forward that process. So less dead end consultations. So attract qualified buyers. So that someone, when they've seen your video, when they've understood who you are, you've kind of been able to connect with them on a deeper level, and that they're actually interested in what you have. So this is probably not something that people think of, but essentially we want to repel clients that are just a waste of time. People that are just looking for something, in my industry, if they want something fast and, just want to get it out there and cheap, then, that's not really my ideal client, because I'd rather spend time to do something that's right, that's helpful, that looks good. And essentially, not to go into too much detail, but if I do shoddy work, then all of a sudden, that work becomes my business card. So I'd rather spend the time to do something right.
Marcel, can I make a point here?
Of course.
Yeah. So one of the things that this sums this up for me is that in an internet age and in a Zoom dominated or Microsoft Teams dominated environment, we heard from Greg earlier that 40% of jobs can now be performed from work from home office. The number one thing in sales, in my experience anyway, is building trust. And if you've ever bought something from somebody you don't like and don't trust, it's probably only ever happened once. There's no repeat sales there. And so one of the things that video can do is it can build credibility. It can build trust. And I have a hard time explaining to some of the young people that I coach, especially to the young women I coach, that they have to be out there on video. A lot of young women and some not so young women are very, very, very hesitant about that for a lot of reasons, and some of them good reasons, of course. But nevertheless, people want to see who's behind this project, who's behind this product. They want to know you. They want to know about you. I really want to say that the missing link in all of this, Marcel, is that all of this that you put on the screen here and all of the work you do builds trust, and even in an internet age, faces count. We have a question for you from Belinda. Are we going to get a chance to see an example of your work?
Yes, exactly. So I have some more slides to follow, and there's some work that's showcased within specific categories. So here is, to answer that question on the nose, I have an example video of the Hyatt Place Hotel commercial video. And so, like I was mentioning, my whole goal is solving a problem with video. And so on the outside, most hotels all look the same. You don't really understand what really sets it apart. And this one has a lot that sets it apart. And so our goal in this video was, activating the community, the guests, local businesses to really understand how unique this hotel is. And so this is a local to Ottawa hotel in Bell's Corners.
Experiencing sustainability initiatives is the first step to committing to them. And I think that's really what we're trying to do here, is allow people to experience all level of sustainability initiative, whether it's single-use plastic and getting rid of those, all the way through to, are you comfortable in your room because the Earth Energy is actually providing that comfort, whether it's 20 below in the winter or it's 30 degrees in the summer. And so will they go back and say, geez, maybe I should give this a try? I hope that's the case.
My name's Allison Hunter. I'm the hotel general manager, and our hotel is owned by local entrepreneurs who care very much about the community that they operate in. I've just always been a people person. The social connection and human interaction that you have with people makes coming to work so enjoyable and doesn't even feel like work. You get to be inside these families and these people's moments, and it's so special to be able to share that and have an impact on those people's lives. Without the genuine hospitality that we give to our guests, it's just another building. It truly is the people that make a difference, and so it starts with our team. Many times you go to a hotel and it's built for a business traveler or maybe more geared towards families, but the Hyatt Place room really fits everyone's lifestyle. Whether you're sitting with your family and you want to watch a movie on Friday night, or you're traveling on business and you need to sit and finish that report, it really can be for everyone and anyone. Some of the major initiatives that we have at the hotel include our 225 solar panels on the roof, We're also focusing on elimination of single-use plastics, another way to conserve energy, motion sensor lighting in the hallways, thousands and thousands of bees living on our roof, pollinating all the flowers in the area on the local farms. We'll even be able to sell our honey.
We've been able to make a real difference in the energy consumption that we're going to have and use in this hotel. It's a way to allow people to see that it works. But I think, some of the other sustainability initiatives we have in the hotel, I think are really going to take off as well and be really important in terms of how we deal with clean products and personal care products and single-use plastics, all those sorts of things. There's a lot of initiatives.
We are one of the world's first as a new construction hotel to open with 5 key rating. So we're extremely proud of that. When you're in your guest room, all the case goods in the guest room were made in New Brunswick. On the ground floor, we have wood tables in the bar that's reclaimed from Ontario lakes. We have a mural of the Ottawa River made by an Ottawa local artist. The more closely knit and more local we could purchase, the better, the less of an impact it has on the environment. And if we can help small businesses, medium businesses in our own backyard, then all the better.
I care about small business. I care about people who work here. I care about the people who are employed by small business. Why not get products from them? Why not employ people across the country? I think it's really important to do.
It's very important to not just be the new business on the corner. We want to immerse ourselves in the community.
We're going to do that right. From the people, to the products, to our methodology, to our thinking, all the way through to our sustainability initiatives.
Follow us on social media to continue learning about our sustainability story, and visit our website to book your next stay.
All right, so we're able to tell so much of the story of this hotel, and the goal is to be able to hit play and let the story take you on a journey. And I think after watching this video, you really were able to connect with what they're doing, and our goal was to really show the local and general community that this hotel has gone to great lengths to invest in local. And hopefully by showing that, it would invite local to invest back in that hotel, whether it's using their boardroom or having their employee events hosted there. But anyway, so a lot of neat ways to really connect a community by just telling someone's story. Here's another example here. This is a shorter video, but this local, paving company was finding that they would have estimators come on site, and they would talk to the client, and then as they would go do their whole assessment of the property, the measurements, the client would essentially just be waiting around, and all the momentum that they had built up on that sales meeting was kind of lost, and then they'd come back with a quote, and it kind of felt like you're starting over again. And so what they wanted to do was create a series of videos to really help show the clients the scale of their company, show the clients their dedication to quality, show the company who they were and what their values were. And so ideally, what would be happening in that scenario is that the client would be able to basically have the mystery taken out of the whole process and understand the value that this specific company has to bring, rather than thinking, oh, well, maybe it's not worth that extra price, or maybe I'll just, keep my other appointments for estimates. So here we are, Black Tar, local to Ottawa. Oh, bit of a slow stream there. Sorry, folks. So that was just one of 12 videos that we produced. Each video kind of dives into a different topic.
That was powerful.
Yeah, definitely. It kind of separates them from, a guy with a truck and shows the scale of who they are. And yeah, so there's a lot more videos as well. Another video we created for them was a employee testimonial. So they got to share what it's like to work with this company. And so, I mean, essentially in this specific field, it's hard to make employees stick, right? And just to have that loyalty of those employees communicated to the company and how they enjoy it and the family atmosphere that they offer. Yeah, it just really had some neat traction in terms of their hiring process. All right. I made it full screen and it's going to play again. I'm not sure why it keeps doing that, but let me see if I.
Yeah, that happens to me too. So you just have to get to the next slide.
All right, there we go. So here we are, Long Yards. This is auto planning.
I started Long Yards because I was a contractor. I didn't have enough space in my house. My house looked like a junkyard. I had 3 trailers, tools, equipment everywhere. The light bulb went off. Hey, how come there's no storage for the big stuff? We love to offer our clients a high level of service with a lit up facility, text to open gate, cameras where you can watch everything all the time, a locked in, screened in yard, and they always know that their possessions are safely locked away. It just creates such a better environment for your business knowing it's in a professional atmosphere, not at home. From offering loading docks, a small business community that helps each other, and it's allowed many businesses here to scale and to see growth. You can have a mailbox, a shared office, you have your yard, you have power in your yard. So just with those foundational items, you can almost do anything with your yard space. We have landscapers, general contractors, electricians, car dealerships, shipping and receiving, importing. The list just goes on and on. It's very simple with us. You need a space, we got the space. How big? We'll provide it. For all your business needs or personal needs, feel free to reach out to us at longyards.com and make sure to follow us on social media.
I still think that's a great video. I mean, Chris is a good subject, of course, but that's a really strong video. I just love it.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. So I'll skip this video just in the idea of time, but just to tell you about the specific clients, another local client here in Ottawa. They're creating all this quality furniture, and they wanted to essentially eliminate those, hey, can you make me this, wooden table for the same price that IKEA makes the table for? And so, part of our mission here was to create or communicate the value and the product and the quality that they were able to offer to help share the value of what they're doing and hopefully help minimize the amount of comparables, if you will.
So Marcel, one of the points you keep making, which I think is a very strong point, is that you want to try and avoid entangling yourself with time wasters.
Exactly.
And you want to qualify your clients. I think that's really, really important. And to use a hockey analogy, Jacques Martin was an NHL coach for the Ottawa Senators back in the day. And he told me that he was so defensively minded. And I asked him why. He said, well, Bruce, for every goal you prevent, it's 2 you don't have to score. And I would say that's very similar with a client. If you have a client who's qualified, you're avoiding 2 that aren't. And so it's a huge leverage point for all of us, me as a coach or Timberware as a, making the high-end furniture, whatever. And so I would say whatever you're selling, whether it's apartments, if you're selling, like I have some apartments for rent in Belleville for $1,600 for a studio, whereas, people are going, what? We've never seen $1,600 for a studio. We're thinking, maybe $900, $1,000. This kind of stuff that Marcel is emphasizing explains the value proposition in 1 or 2 or 3 minutes. And saves me, somebody like me, half an hour or 45 minutes on the phone with somebody who was looking for a $900 apartment, and we can't provide that.
Yeah, and that's that's really great. I'm glad you're sharing value, how we can help it connect it to the specialty of this specific group. So that's fantastic. And that's really always the conversation, is how can we help? I won't get too much into this next point, but essentially, where we're planning to show this video will change very much how our approach to production will be, just because certain presentation formats and places will really have a big impact on who the viewer is, what their mindset is. Like, for instance, LinkedIn, it's all about business. Don't waste my time, and a bit of an ADD type of a mentality. So for instance, if we're creating a LinkedIn specific video, it's all about front loading the offer. So, let's not wait till the end of the video to let the customer know what we're offering, what our the big attraction is. Let's give it right up the front, catch their attention, in and out. The other social media or platforms will really dictate who the client is and what they're there for. So for instance, on Facebook, people aren't necessarily looking for ads, but they're always interested in story. And so if we can tell a story that is impactful, then we're able to draw the attention of the people that are sitting on that platform participating. Yeah. And so, another thing that's worth mentioning is training videos. Training videos, if you think about specific companies and how much time they spend training, what if we could eliminate a big portion of that time and by just duplicating that training on video? For instance, a client was spending 1 day a week training people how to use their products. And so they're able to make a video just to help show that process, and they got 1 day a week back.
Wow.
And so there's really neat ways that you can save your time. And that's part of the ROI, is if we can use our time to do other things that are meaningful in terms of income generating, then that's a win. Of course, with training comes that teacher type of, when you wear your teacher hat, you can have an authority, you can come across as an authority in the field. And so when we do these meet the expert type of videos, that online content can really position you as an authority. Testimonial videos. This is another example here from that day we filmed with you, Bruce. But testimonial videos are, when a lot of business owners think about video, the whole process can feel intimidating. We try to make it as easy as possible, but kind of a fun way to kind of go around that up front is, well, let's do a testimonial video. Let's get people's experience with your company, and that has a huge conversion rate. It's some of the quicker videos to produce, so you can typically get a video done for a lower cost, because we're simply going to a client's place and hearing their perspective. So anyway, I'll play this right here.
Hi everyone, my name is Bruce Firestone. I'm the founder of the Ottawa Senators, and I'm a real estate investment and business coach. I'm here to talk about long yards. What it is basically you take an industrial property, you divide it up into small contractor yards. And I met Chris Long a number of years ago when he was a young carpenter, and he was really building his career. He had lots of tools and equipment, and he asked me, I can't park my 20-ton loader in my driveway, in your suburban driveway. It won't be long before the ordnance police and the bylaw officers come along and tell you to move it. So what we came up with was the idea of having a mini contractor yard. And if he's going to have one for himself, why not have 20 more or 30 more or 100 more for other people who are in the same situations? They're HVAC technicians, they're plumbers, electricians, you name it. And they could store their material in these small yards. They can have a sea can there, whatever they need. I love the business. I love the model. It is the one thing that has come closest to Tim Ferriss's 4-hour work week. When I read that book initially, I thought, I'm not sure if I believe that. As an entrepreneur myself, 60-hour work weeks are probably pretty typical, and other entrepreneurs will confirm that for you. But this comes really close to it. One of my clients who runs one of these yards, he's making about $25,000 a month doing it. And I asked him how many hours a week he was working, and he said between 3 and 5 hours. I said, you're kidding. He said, no. These industrial tenants, they pay their rent. If something goes wrong wrong, they fix it themselves, they don't call you, it's really low hassle, they stay for a long time. And so I said, what are you going to do with all the extra time you have now? He said, I'm going to play. First person who ever told me he didn't want more money. He's just going to use the income that he's generating to play more. And he's only in his mid-40s. So a lot of people today are looking for what I guess we could call an oh yes strategy, a one-year exit strategy, where they could find something that they could do that's not too difficult, not too risky, and create a business that will sustain themselves and their family for 3 generations. Now that Chris has really got the system perfected, you know, the website, the billing, the invoicing, finding clients and customers, and long yards, he's got that marketing down pat, he's got the technology down pat, I love the branding. That sort of support is really worth it to me. Don't tell Chris this, but I plan to do 1 or 2 long yards for myself and my family. I'm kicking myself that I didn't do it 5 years ago. So whether you're my age, you know, quite a bit older than Chris, or your 30s, 40s, whatever, this is something that I think really has legs and will sustain you for a very long time.
So what do you think, guys? Did he make me look like a video star? I think so. Marcel, I have a video that I'd like to play. We have a few minutes left. I'd like to play a video for everybody if I have your permission.
Of course.
I'll show you this video. It's about a 2 or 3 minute video that one of my clients did. It's a few years ago. They were building a subdivision with, I don't know, 60 lots, and they had about 10 or $12 million in sales they had to make. And I wanted them to do a video, and they hired this group to do this 2 or 3 minute video. So I want to show it to you, Marcel, and to the rest of the people on the call, still on the call with us, and people who will watch this recorded, and get some comments from you, Marcel, about it, because I like the video. And just to jump ahead a little bit, they released this video, and in about 6 or 8 weeks, they sold almost all of their lots. So we're talking, 10 or $12 million in sales. So let me show you this. I'll share my screen. And Marcel, just give me a thumbs up if you can hear it. Okay, I'll move this over. Hang on. Before. So I'll just move stuff over so you can see the whole screen so it doesn't record. So Marcel, I'm going to turn up my volume a little bit. Just give me the thumbs up if you can hear it.
It's something we are all looking for.
I don't hear audio yet.
That one perfect place that changes us.
Oh. Yeah, it's playing.
The place where an entire lifetime of searching gets washed away by impossibly pure water from the north. And what's left is nothing but the peace, tranquility, and beauty of our new town. A refuge and a playground, this place where our searching, where our roots weave their way into the richness of the soil, and the river does the same, fabric to our soul. Our soul and the souls here with us, our family, our friends, and those who found this place long before we did. And so the river flows on, but not before it chooses us, molding those of us lucky enough to embrace this day, knowing that there's truly no one who would rather be. These are the good days, the best days, the days that when it's all said and done, you'll hold it. But it's not good, not even close. We've only just found this place. So here's to today, here's to the river, and most importantly, here's to the home.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think what it does is really activates the imagination within yourself, right? And people always want to see themselves in a video. And so I think they did a good job of widening the, that presentation of who you're seeing and the lifestyles that that you're interested in. And so, no, I think it's a very effective video. And like you said, they sold all their lots. So
yeah, I mean, they released that video, and it wasn't just the video, but this was done by a production house out of Kentucky. And but all of the people that you saw on the video, and I know it was hard to hear, but all of the people that you saw on the video are local. They weren't actors. These are people involved in the project. The owners were there, their daughters and sons. And it really was, it was a fun project to do. And it wasn't inexpensive. It was, I can't remember whether it was 30 or 40,000 US dollars, but it was something like that. But it's a mini film, really. And unfortunately, I guess the video wasn't all that great, but still really worthwhile. And if you're going to sell 10 or 11 or maybe $12 million in lots in a few weeks, it's worth doing. So, Marcel, just to sum up, can you put your contact information, your name, your cell number, and your email address in this? And I'll make sure that when we put the video on YouTube unlisted, everybody gets a copy. And again, I apologize for last month not running an ROI group. I was too ill to do it. But you can pick out Marcel's contact information. I really think, and you don't have to spend $30,000 or $40,000, on a video. You can spend much less than that. And Marcel did say that, if you're doing testimonials for by your clients, it's a lot less money. But I think it's really worthwhile. And my videos that I make, my homemade videos, are really crappy, but the ones that Marcel does, he's a true artist, and he can really help your business get to the next level. In fact, Marcel, I'm going to reach out to you. Some young guys that I am working with are doing a really cool project, and I think I should show them this, your part of this video, and because they have a project that I think could really benefit from this. Marcel, could you do me a favor? Could you send me that link to that Chris Long video? The one he did explaining that. And if you don't mind, I'm going to share that with these young people. All right.
Of course, we'll be happy to.
So send that to me. Last word to you, Marcel, before we break for the day. And again, I apologize to everybody for what happened last month, but I just was too ill to do anything. So there's Marcel's information in the chat box. Marcel, last word to you, and thank you so much, Greg, and thank you, Marcel, for doing this.
Of course, yeah. Well, thanks for your time. It's always I always love talking video, and I know that this group really spans across the country.
Yeah.
But and I think one of my missions was just to kind of get some sparks going and seeing,
Yeah.
wait, how can video save me time? How can video be helpful to a given circumstance? And so, yeah, I mean, I'm always happy to chat as well. If I can help brainstorm for what you're going through, then I'd be happy to.
Thank you again for everybody. Thank you for coming today. And again, I'll try and do better next month.